Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio, educate, enlighten, entertain. And today our special guest is Caroline McBride, who is a PR director at a famous restaurant company, who I'm going to let her explain to you who she is. So take it away, Carolyn.
Hi, Lillian. It's so great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I am the Director of Public Relations for a restaurant group based in New York City called Serafina. And I also consult for other restaurant groups, hospitality companies, as well as in the beauty industry. I have been a publicist for over 10 years. And what I did, and the reason why we're talking today, is I took some of my experiences and created a composite of characters around the world that I have encountered. And I wrapped it up into a fictional book called Four Seasons at Angelino's, which is a romantic comedy that takes place in the span of 1 year. And it takes place around the world. Each chapter is named after a different city. And in each chapter, I try to give insight into what makes these places special. I only write about places that I have physically been to, and I try to include points of interest, including restaurants and tourist attractions, and even just the local park that locals know about, but maybe tourists don't know about. So I'm hoping to entice people to travel more.
So when you created your characters, what kind of foibles did you give her?
What? Well, it's a running joke because people say she must be based on you, right? And even some of my own closest friends have said, I didn't know you were such a big martini drinker. And I'm like, no, this is fiction. Okay, this is a fictional character. And what I did draw upon was my experiences of encountering new cultures via the workplace, which is different than when you go in as a tourist and go to some museums and stay in a hotel and you're in and out in a few days of a city or a special place. Well, I went into places around the world as part of my job and my career, and I got to know local people and local customs on a level that's different than just being a casual tourist. So I try to incorporate those points into the novel to create an interesting story. So you have two layers. You have Charlotte McPherson, the protagonist, who's a career woman. She's in her mid-30s. She's based in New York City, and she's doing great as far as that's concerned. But at the same time, she has an unfortunate experience with her boyfriend, and it's time to find somebody new. So she gives herself a year to find the one. And she's so eager to find love that she jumps into certain relationships that she really should not be involved in. But she's kind of blindly giving all these different men around the world a chance. And of course, there's somebody special who's been a friend of many years. And the reader's left wondering, okay, is it this new heartthrob who's the one for her, or is it somebody else? And I know from our previous discussions that you definitely are very keen on travel and tourism and how people are represented around the world and how Americans will sort of mesh with other cultures. And so that's something that is covered in the novel as well.
That's good. So you didn't follow the traditional boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, boy and girl have a blowout. In the case of Romeo and Juliet, they killed each other. But in other books, and Emma, she finally found her true love for the guy who was there when she was born.
Exactly. I am a hopeful romantic, not a hopeless romantic, a hopeful romantic. And I find that love happens differently for everybody. And it's not always so easy. It's often complicated. And I urge people to think about their own relationships and romantic escapades. And often they are complicated. I commend those who meet Mr. Right or Miss Right when they're young and go off on to live happily ever after. That's not what happens in my novel. And I think that's not usually what happens with most people
No,
because
not a hallmark moment at all. In fact, most of the time it's a disassociated Hallmark moment. That's one of the reasons why I can only take Hallmark in very small doses because of that. So, if you were going to put a traveling kit together for people, sort of like your heroine, what kind of advice would you give people, especially women who don't often travel abroad by themselves? What kind of a traveling kit would you pack for them?
Well, first of all, like the protagonist in Four Seasons at Angelino's, I would say try to travel with carry on only whenever you can do that. Many of my friends think I'm completely insane, but I rarely check in a suitcase. I do carry on only. You have to be a strategic packer. That means, ladies, no more than two pairs of high heels, for example. And I say throw in, it depends on where you're going, of course, but some ballet flats depending upon the weather. If you're going somewhere cold, wear the boots on the plane. And I say that the less you pack and keeping your possessions with you, you're less likely to have your luggage lost. There was a famous trip amongst my friends that I took to Morocco for New Year's Eve several years back, and they lost my luggage in London Heathrow. There was a big screw up that year, and my friends were so kind to offer to loan me clothes. However, I'm almost 5'11", my shoe size 9.5. The dresses they wanted to loan me, those worked, but not the size 6 and 7 shoes. So there I was with just some travel clothes and gym clothes, and it was very problematic. So I say keep your travel on with you. The other thing besides getting your luggage lost is when you land, you can jump out and run into this new place that you should be busy exploring and not stuck waiting for your luggage at that carousel. There's also an issue of valuables. I tell ladies I do not recommend bringing your finest jewelry, that special necklace that your father gave you or whatever it may be. It is safer at home than when you have a quick weekend trip or even a business trip. If you do bring valuables, definitely take advantage of the hotel safe. And also your passport. That's also something that I say when you're international. As soon as you check in, you show them your passport and then put it in the safe, and don't go there again until it's time to leave. Then get your passport. You don't want to be stuck in a foreign country without a passport and have to prolong your trip an extra week or two or however long it takes to get that documentation back. There's also the issue of money. I mean, fortunately now credit cards are savvy to all the travelers, but I say it doesn't hurt to notify your credit card company if you're going to Chicago for the weekend or for a few days. Just let them know. Otherwise, it has happened a few times where I'm paying for something and they tell me something's wrong with my credit card, which I say is impossible. I always pay it, and it's because it's a security alert. And my credit card's saying, why is somebody in Chicago trying to use her card, not knowing it's me? Then they're trying to call, and things just get very awkward. You're better off just warning them in advance, and they will expect to see charges in the cities that you're visiting. So those are some of my tips. Safety first. As a woman, I've traveled to the Middle East alone. I flew by myself to Lebanon twice. Once when I was in graduate school. I've gone to Dubai a few times for work. And, sometimes I'm with my team, but other times when I'm on my own, you just have to always be alert as a woman in foreign countries. Just be safe. And after seeing several episodes of Locked Up Abroad, this I think goes without saying, but apparently people still get duped into this. Don't take anything into another country or out a package on behalf of your neighbor or your boyfriend's cousin or whatever it may be, because you don't know, those innocent looking vitamins could be something else. You don't want to end up behind bars. I know that's really extreme, but I have to throw that in there because people unfortunately can be taken advantage of, and it leads to bad things.
If you take drugs with you, leave them in the original vials that have your doctor's information already typed there along with the pharmacy, and call up your drug pharmacy company to tell them that you're going to be abroad and you may have to order some drugs. That way, you're prepared if customs stops you. All they have to do is get in contact with your doctor. I have an emergency number for my doctor. I can reach him 24/7. So if something like that happens, he can clear it up very clearly. You're not going to argue with a doctor for whatever the reason. The other thing you need to think of, and it's something I've done, I have crocheted myself up a square shawl so I can wear it over my shoulders to keep me warm from the draft of the plane, but I can also cover my knees and go asleep should I require a blanket, a lot cheaper than renting it out on the plane. And you just wear it tied around your shoulders while you're dashing through the airport. I've done dashing with kids as old as 4 or 5 years old, and trust me, you don't have too many spare hands when you're grabbing onto them and running through with luggage through an airport, but it does work very well. When my mother went to London, she took her fur coat with her in September and held it on her arm and would hit anybody with the cane should they try and take it away from her. The mink with the full length coat with a hood, ladies, and it made it to London and it kept her warm in the stone churches and it came back with her. But she held on to it to dear life, and that's one of the things that I would recommend. And if you are Jewish and you're going to enter a country that is not friendly to Jews, may I suggest you get a letter from a Unitarian minister saying you are Protestant.
Wow,
That
yes.
your head on your shoulders.
I didn't think about it that way. That's very interesting. Wow. Yeah. I will say, I naturally wear a cross almost every day. I don't happen to have it on right now, but I do keep that in mind when I was in Turkey, for example, and just to be extra careful. Like, okay, the point is when you travel, you want to blend in and not call attention to yourself. And of course, when you go somewhere like Tokyo, it might be hard to blend in if they're very homogeneous. But I try to, I'll wear my hair back in a low ponytail in certain areas and just, dress modestly. I think that's important for women too. Like when I was in Morocco, for example, or Dubai, it's not, try to avoid the short skirts and tank tops, and it's just different. Of course, if you're in Brazil, anything goes. So it just depends on where you are. So be mindful of that. Absolutely.
Dress code. Go in and take time to look up the culture. I know that if you go to Israel and you want to go to the Wailing Wall, ladies, you need to wear long skirts, long shirts. You got to keep your head and face covered. That is the culture of the country, not so much religion, to show respect.
I actually got detained when I was leaving Israel in 2008, and I'm still a bit traumatized. It wasn't for work, but here we go. I was, with a philanthropist. There was a big project there, but he was ill and had to leave early. So once again, I was traveling by myself at the airport, and they called me out. They were picking people out, and I was watching, and I thought, oh, that's sad, because I never thought it would happen to me. And the next thing you know, I got called out, and there's a central area where they're going through luggage, and then I thought everything would be fine, and then they said you have to come with us, and then they took me deep down into a cement concrete area, and that's when I became very nervous, because I realized, being so independent, again, this was 2008, I didn't tell my family, by the way, I'm going by myself to the airport. And I thought nobody back home even knows what I'm doing right now or where I am, and that was so irresponsible. I learned from that, because if something would have gone wrong and I just disappeared, they would tell, oh, she never showed up to the airport. We don't know. I mean, as fate would have it, I was, they went through my hair. They were, with gloves on. I guess they're looking for bomb residue, and went through my toes. And I don't know, I shouldn't make a joke, but I'm like, gosh, redheads, we get picked on sometimes. But, I had traveled to Bethlehem, which of course is the birthplace of Jesus, but that's also out of the territory of Israel. I think that might have been to Lebanon a few times. So for whatever reason, I was on their radar when I was leaving. And fortunately, I made my flight in the nick of time. The whole procedure probably took 2 hours, but it was very nerve wracking. So, again, if you're traveling on your own, even for business, just make sure somebody at home knows like what time you're landing and what time you took off. And of course, it's all relative. It depends on, you think nothing would happen out of Austin, right? Austin, Texas. But at the same time, you don't know that your driver to the airport, your Uber driver, he might be a bad guy. So just keep people aware in your friends and family circle what's going on, so you have somebody to reach out to for help, or somebody who will at least notify the authorities if you go missing.
Absolutely. When I was hosteling in Canada, of all places, I was 16 years old. I was on a 3-speed bike. Everybody else were on 10 speeds, and we biked from Montreal to Vancouver. And we were taking the train back, and one of the kids whipped out a reefer. And we landed up in a police station, and Canadian laws are not the US laws.
Wow.
And they put us in different cubicles and with knives ripped open everything. And my father said he got a call in the middle of the night saying, "Is your daughter on drugs?" And he says, "My daughter wouldn't even know what drugs look like." He says, "Go ahead, ask her what a reefer is, and she'll tell you something you find down at the station." And the
Yeah.
judge let me go. But he didn't let the lady go from New York City or some of the guys because they smart assed their way. They thought they were Americans and they could get away with it. And it doesn't work that way. So, and I mean, they tore the bikes apart too. Who knew that people put drugs in the tubes of tires? I didn't, or inside the skeletal of a bike. Never would occur to me, but then I was a real innocent. However, they don't take that in consideration. So just remember, Europe is not an extension of the United States. The laws are different. So make sure you take your research. You can find yourself doing 7 years of hard time in one of those old castles that you rave about.
That is so true. You really need to be careful and follow the local laws. And obviously, if you don't get in any trouble right there, you probably just alleviated any problems you might have with the law. Just follow the law and be law abiding, and you won't have issues. And if it's a case of mistaken identity, just try to be reasonable and rational, and again, have that lifeline back home. So if your flight, if you don't show up, they will come looking.
What about
Absolutely.
food? What do you need to be careful with when you enter a country?
It's a great question because, as Americans, we're so used to our cuisine, and a lot of that's massively processed food, but also when you go to another country, it's just amazing the different things that people eat that we are not used to. In India, there's a chapter in Four Seasons at Angelino's. And India, Americans are especially concerned about food poisoning, and that's because of the way the dairy is pasteurized. And so, we have a close family friend who nearly died from, according to him, from eating ice cream in India. So I always say avoid all dairy when you're in India. Fortunately, I didn't have any problems. I was only there once. I love Mumbai. I want to go back. And I love Indian food also, but I'm just very careful in India about dairy. I also recommend thinking logically, things that are cooked well. You don't want raw meat. Just make sure things are cooked very well. Or you don't have to be nervous when things are baked all the way through, like a cookie. There's no need to stress out. I will say that you just want to make sure if you have an allergy to be extra careful, because it's not like America where the waiter comes, "Do you have any allergies?" And where things are clear. If you're in France, for example, Nutella is huge in Europe, and they might use some of that in the chocolate cake that you want to eat. And if you have a nut allergy, that's going to be a disaster. And when you're traveling, there's nothing worse than being sick when you're on a trip because you have a limited amount of time to explore a new place and there's so much to do. And already your body is being pushed to the limit because there's a sleep jet lag issue, sleep deprivation. Maybe you're going to an amazing play or concert that you have tickets for, and it's 3 a.m. back home where you started. You're going to be extra tired. So you need to be healthy, you need to have energy. And I personally like to eat these little vitamin C chewable tablets over the counter. I think it's good for your immune system. I'm by no means a doctor. I'm just saying what has helped me. And even when I'm not traveling, I tend to nibble on one or two almost every day. And it gives me an extra boost. But I will say, we cover prescriptions, but it's a good idea maybe to have a few little, I don't know, Excedrin or whatever your headache medicine is, or just almost like a mini medicine kit so that again if you're in Paris or wherever it may be and it's midnight, you don't have to think, well, okay, now all the stores are closed and I really have a headache and I need an aspirin. You already have it with you. So a little traveling medicine cabinet with whatever you need during your regular life to make it through. It's good just to be cautious to have it with you when you travel.
Another thing you may want to be aware of is that different countries have different climate, and it may not be the type of climate, heat, cold that you're used to in the States. So I know in Britain, if it goes up to 70 degrees, they have a heat wave. I mean, that's what I've been told. I haven't been there. But so when you go to the seashore in England, may be a little bit different to going to the seashore in a warmer climate like Portugal or Spain or somewhere closer to the equator. I was told by African Americans they can sunburn on their dark skin, so they have to put lotion over their skin to protect it. Be mindful the closer you get to the equator.
Oh, yes. Gosh, you bring up so many good points. I was in Punta del Este for New Year's Eve again a few years back, and it was the same thing. It looks like such a beautiful, nice day, but I have fair skin, but to your point, it doesn't matter how dark your skin is, it still is sensitive to the sun. Just ask one of my best friends who's a skin cancer specialist. You really should be careful. And certain areas like South America, the ozone, there's a difference with the intensity of the sun than you might experience in Southern California, for example. And of course, with the weather, I have this issue a lot being based in LA because it's pretty temperate most of the year. And I have to think, okay, now I'm going to New York or wherever I'm going. And usually it's much more cold. In February, it's probably not 75 degrees like it is in LA and most other cities. So be mindful of the weather. I study the weather I'm kind of fanatical about it for a few weeks leading up to the trip, because again, I'm traveling with a carry-on suitcase. So I want to have all the appropriate clothes weather-wise. Why pack like 2 sweaters if you're not going to need it? To your point, pack like something to keep you cozy on the plane, but also try to make it useful for when you're walking around the city in the evening, wherever you're going. Hopefully it's the same thing. Just the less is more. Even though I travel carry-on only, I can't tell you how many times, pretty much every time, I guess I can tell you that I don't use all of the clothes. I probably use 80%. And I study it after and I think, see, I didn't need to bring those things. I need to do better next time. Because the less you travel with, the easier everything is.
When you travel, go look up silk. There are different heaviness of silk. I have a silk sweater that can see me through a summer night and keep me warm on a winter's day because that's what silk does. It's one of these universal materials that you can use both for cold and hot weather. And when you pack silk, it rolls up. It doesn't take a lot of room. So take a look at some of the fabrics and what they're made up of. Talk to
That
some
is
of the fashionistas. They know their stuff inside out. They have to. That's how they make their living. Find out which kind of fabric you can use in 2 or 3 different types of climate and cut down the amount of stuff you have to pack.
That is so interesting. I didn't know that about silk, but you bring up a good point. Roll your clothes. That's another thing. Because there's a least likelihood that you have to iron your clothes. So if you're bringing like two pairs of jeans, a few skirts, a few shirts, and a few dresses, roll them and put them in your suitcase. That's, I think, Marie Kondo is the covers all that. But when you roll your clothes, she's actually suggesting to do that at home. But I'm saying also when you're traveling, roll up your clothes and you'll have more room in that carry-on suitcase to fit everything.
If it is dry clean and you have to pack it, put it in the bathroom, turn on the hot water, take a shower, and steam them. Don't
Yes.
laugh. It works, and it's a lot cheaper than sending them out through the hotel because there are different standards of hotels in Europe, and you may not be able to afford the Hilton that still has New York standards.
It absolutely works. The steaming in the shower, I've done that many times. So that's great advice. Absolutely. And by the way, we're talking so much about travel, and I understand we're in a pandemic and we've all had to change our travel plans, be it for business or pleasure. And that's something that to me is special about Four Seasons at Angelino's, because with this book, it's 304 pages, but you feel like you've taken a trip around the world. And every chapter is named after a different city. Again, it's only places that I have been. And it moves very quickly. People have told me they've read it in 2 days. And I want people to feel like even though they might be stuck because of the pandemic, they still can see different cities through the story, through the book.
So tell everybody where they can find you, Caroline, on the World Wide Web. Tell them about your web. Tell them about where they can find the book. Brag.
Well, I'm not much of a bragger, but I will tell you that you could go to my website, carolinemcbride.com, and I help you check it out. You can find all the places that the book is sold throughout the country. Four Seasons at Angelino's is in Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Bookshop, of course, Target, which is great. And also here in Southern California, there's a store called The Ripped Bodice, and I like to give them a shout out because they are the only brick and mortar romance bookstore on the West Coast, and they carry the book as well. Amazon, of course, has it worldwide, so anybody in any country can always buy it on Amazon. And I'm just really excited that people so far have really enjoyed the story. And I hope that I can make people smile and make them happy and bring some sunshine into this time that we're living in, this crazy pandemic. I want people to be happy. I am a hopeful romantic, not a hopeless romantic. And I hope that by reading the story, you'll see that side, that relationships, the magic can happen. And also there's some subplots and some subliminal messages like an anti-drug message and drink alcohol in moderation. The protagonist gets into all kinds of trouble when she drinks too much. But, drink in moderation. And I also include a subplot that involves an adoption story that I hope will warm people's heart on a human level. So it kind of goes beyond the passion and romantic love level and just warm people up for the human experience and adoption and what that can mean to certain families. So please check it out.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. Cool Your Heels with Lillian Caldwell and our special guest, Caroline McBride. And you can hear it on youtube.com/PWR Network, underline PW Talk Radio, or youtube.com/PWTalkRadio.com, on Facebook.com/Lillian Colo 35. You can also listen to the audio on iHeart, Amazon Alexa, iTunes, on Spreaker, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also at https:// passionateworldtalkradio.com/Lillian Caldwell. And before you leave us for the day, Goff had this to say in the early 19th century: the older we grow, the greater become the ordeals. Here, here. So, everyone, have a terrific Labor Day weekend. If you're riding your tricycles and motorcycles, please remember to drive safely. Don't drive and drink. Keep on your face masks and remember the 6 feet that you're kept between it will probably keep you alive for New Year's. That's an interesting thought. So, thank you very much, one and all, and have a great evening.